Hello, colleagues. Welcome to session 2 of the Active Reciprocal Reading Coaching Program. I hope you're all well. I'm recording this on the 17th of July, Wednesday the 17th of July, and it will be uploaded shortly to the Pixel app. First of all in PowerPoint format, but eventually we hope with a link to YouTube so that you're able to see that and read the PowerPoint slides themselves. What I intend to do today, or perhaps I should go into the welcome slide. Habari, welcome to you all. What I intend to do today is to try and extend our understanding of the 5-step process. Now, if you remember, this fits into Pixel process. So we're looking at what are the barriers to improvement that your students face on a day-to-day basis. And one of those barriers is reading, in particular reading English for many of their lessons and for the exams. So ARR is a simple 5-step process to help students understand reading through talk. So what we're going to do today is we're going to reflect on what we did in session 1. We're going to remind ourselves of the ARR program and what we're doing. We'll have a look again at the diagram of ARR to understand those different steps in the process, remind ourselves each one and the order in which they happen. We're not going to discuss the progress in our schools because we're not doing this live anymore. We've tried again today to make a connection with you in Morogoro, and that hasn't been possible, and that's fine. What we're hoping, and I'll keep reminding you of this during this session, is what we're hoping is that on WhatsApp, you will let us know how you're getting on and we can respond to you accordingly. And then, although the last point there says agree a date for session 3, next Zoom call, we're not going to do it that way. We're simply going to record all of these sessions now. We won't do them live. We'll simply record them and eventually we'll get them onto the Pixel app for you. And then rather than use the chat function, which you would do if it was a live session, if you could use WhatsApp to let us know how you're getting on. So we'll manage to find a way to do the ARR coaching program according to how the connectivity allows us. So why did we begin this in the first place? Well, we know that students reading of English in all schools, not just in Tanzania, in UK schools as well, is a really crucial issue. And unless students are able to read English and have a way to help themselves understand it, or to make meaning, to understand it through talk, then they won't make the progress that we know they can make. We're going to do it, or we've already started, came to Tanzania, if you remember, earlier this year, and we've started with session 1. We're going to work together to trial this ARR process. Very keen on working with you because you are the experts in Tanzania. I've just finished working on a major action research program in English schools, primary schools this time. 150 primary schools have been in the trial because we know from the evidence that we're getting from schools here that this 5-step process makes a real difference to pupils' understanding of English. So there's 5 sessions. This is number 2. We were going to do 1 each month. We've decided, Madam Betson and Madam Allison and myself decided just today that we're going to record the next 3 sessions very quickly. So by the end of next week, by the end of July or the beginning of August, we hope to have the program complete and we'll get it all to you on the app. And therefore each session, the PowerPoints will be on the app and there will be a link to YouTube eventually when we can manage that, because we've had a few problems technically doing that, but Mr. Martin believes that we've got them resolved, and we'll get that done as soon as we can. So if you remember, we were working in partnership, want to work in partnership with you. Our role is to explain the ARR program, to get your feedback and listen to it, hopefully on WhatsApp, to offer you advice and guidance, and so that we can learn from you, because we want to do this in other areas of Tanzania and Ghana and other countries. So this is very new, and what you tell us is vitally important. We need to learn from you. We were hoping that your role would be to choose some students, decide which text you're going to work on, plan a session of ARR for your students, and then trial that session. Do it with your students, and then give us the feedback so we can find out what problems you're having with it, whether it's working well or not working well, so that we can talk to you and we can amend the program and improve it. I want to emphasize that you are the professionals, because you're implementing this. We have done it here in this country. No one has done it in Tanzania. We want to be able to reflect, to think about how your students respond to this, because you're working in a different environment, in a different context. You have larger classes. You have some students who will be good at English. Some will be much poorer at English. How does it work in that mixed ability, large class context? We'd like you, if possible, to collect some evidence of impact, even if it's an anecdote, just you observing a small group of students doing it well. Why were they doing it well? What did you support them with? Did they understand the process straight away? So if possible, it would be great if you could take some brief notes or observe it, or, never know, video them doing it. That would be brilliant. If you videoed, we could get that video from you, that clip, and show it elsewhere. We'd like you, therefore, to share your professional learning with us in future sessions or on WhatsApp. If you become the experts, we can become the experts and share it with you. Now, clearly, this isn't live, so we can't do a discussion session now. That was built into the program. Instead of which, if you're doing this in a school, just stop for a moment, talk amongst yourselves. Are you happy with the program? Have you any questions? If possible, get somebody in your group to feed back to us so that we can respond to you. Right, let's have a look at, remind ourselves of the 5-step approach to active reciprocal reading. We begin by actively engaging pupils to remember their prior knowledge, activate their prior knowledge. What do they already know about a subject? So, if, for instance, they're doing a subject such as reading a novel in English, you ask them in pairs, what have we already read? What do we know? What are the themes of this book? What is the author called, and what is the author's purpose? What are the themes? So you're getting them to discuss before you predict. And then you come to the prediction itself. What might we be reading today? Well, there might be a headline, or there might be a short sentence, or if you're starting the book, it could be the front cover of the book. Ask students, what do they think they're going to be reading today? Or what might happen next in this narrative? Or this is a science book and it's got a picture of agriculture. What do you think we're going to be reading? Anything to activate their prior knowledge, leading to a prediction. Now, the suggestions for use there, before I come to the other stages, we hope you've chosen students and focused text. We're going to do a little bit more work on paired discussion, paired talk. We're hoping that you will do this twice a week for 15 minutes with a group, and we hope you'll make some responses. So, activate prior knowledge, get students to predict, and then read a short piece of text, not too long, maybe 2 paragraphs at the most. When you finish the reading, ask students which words didn't they understand, because it's very important that you explain these words before you ask them any comprehension questions. So, activate prior knowledge, predict, read, clarify, and then question. Have some prepared questions, but also, if you can, encourage students to ask questions of you and each other. When students construct their own questions, it puts much more demands on them intellectually. So you have some questions and you have a question and answer session. And at the end of that, you summarize. Today we've been reading a section on this particular novel, and we know this happened before we read it, and we found out today about these characters and why they might have acted that way. That's a summary. Step out of that. How have we done? Remind students what they've done. We've done active reciprocal reading. We've predicted, we've read, we've clarified, we've questioned, we've summarized. If you can get students to remember the 5 steps, they can then use those 5 steps when they're reading on their own. And we know from feedback from the students in our research that when we do this, when we ask students to think about 5 steps and to use it in their own reading, they become much more independent readers. They can read on their own. They can read more demanding texts, and they become much more engaged. They read for pleasure more often. So we're moving students towards independence and pleasurable reading. Now, given that this is session 2, we're hoping that you're going to continue with the program. It was about a month ago when we had the first one. I don't know how many sessions you've done so far, but we're hoping that you've been enthusiastic and got a group of teachers together, or even a department to work with to develop ARR a couple of times a week, maybe twice a week. Small group of students to begin with. I hope you've decided on your text. And by now, hopefully, you've planned some sessions. If you haven't yet, it would be great if you could start as soon as you can. For those of you who are even more brave, perhaps you're starting with a whole class. Now, it can be done with a whole class. If anybody is confident enough and brave enough to do that, please let me know, because I really would like to get feedback on that particular version of it. So small group or whole class, doesn't matter, you decide. Love to hear back from you. Once you've implemented the 5-step ARR cycle and hopefully collected evidence of impact, any positive comments, which students did it well, which students didn't, what are students saying about the program, maybe you could invite other colleagues in the school to come and observe you teaching a session. Because when you demonstrate for other teachers, when you model the process for other teachers, it's a very, very powerful example. And they can see how that might work in their own classes, for their own students, in their own lessons. So start small, maybe with a small group, hopefully get it to a full class, and then maybe invite other staff in to have a look. It would be lovely to know, and because we have these conversations with schools that are beginning ARR in English schools, and we say to them, do you think you've had the right students in the group? Did that work well? Was there a problem with the mix of students? Did you manage to demonstrate paired talk. Now, we're going to do a lot more on paired talk in the next session, session 3. But we would like you to experiment by putting students in pairs and getting them to talk to each other informally before they give a formal answer, because this helps to encourage all students to participate. Ask a question, paired discussion, get them to give you an answer. And if you do get students responding positively in that way, praise them, reward them. Let them know that that's a really positive thing to do. Now, in large classes, obviously you will have to have some control techniques. And having been in Ghana and in Tanzania, I've seen teachers do this very, very well. Sometimes it's clapping, sometimes you have a bell, sometimes you bang on the board. Have a signal to begin talking, a signal to stop talking. Because when you've got 50 or 60 students, your voice will go. I know my voice goes. Have a signal to signal starting discussion, finishing discussion. The other suggestion for using ARR is little and often. Now, if we regularly practice for no more than 15 minutes, hopefully twice a week, you could do it more often if you wanted to. And I've had schools in this country that only do it once a week, and it still works. But twice a week gives students the regularity. They're repeating it, and then therefore they become more confident about how to use it. If you also use the term predict, read, clarify, question, summarize, if you use those terms regularly, students learn them and they're able to take them away with them and use them themselves. So praising, reinforcing the use of those terms is very important. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I sent you this planning template. It's just a model to demonstrate it. You don't have to be as detailed as this. I've worked with schools this year in England who spend a lot of time planning, many, many hours, and it works very well. Equally, I've worked with schools that don't bother with the planning and just use the 5 steps. Whatever works for you, but if you want to use that pro forma, that template, please do so. It'd be interesting to know if that has helped. So again, this was going to be a moment when we discussed for 5 or 10 minutes and I would take some feedback. We would love to hear from you. If you can use WhatsApp, please get back to us, but we're going to press straight on today. So today, we're going to look in depth at activating prior knowledge and predicting. And crucially, we're going to be also weaving in using talk or oracy in large classrooms. Now, oracy is currently the #1 issue in English schools. So I'm talking to you today about something that is very much at the forefront of improvements in education in English schools, reading and oracy. So Tanzania could be a trendsetter in Africa by developing these techniques for themselves. I've talked a little bit about activating prior knowledge before. Activating means being active, being focused, getting ready. Prior means things you've learned before, the knowledge of the facts, the topics before. So you're asking students before they start to become focused and engaged. What do we already know that we could bring to this session? So asking them what they know about a topic before you start. Again, paired discussion. Asking them to share that knowledge to raise their interest and to assess how familiar they are with that subject matter. This is what we call activating prior knowledge. And you can just watch the students talking to each other, get some feedback. You as a teacher will then have a better idea what they've remembered, what they've forgotten, where the gaps in their learning are. Activating prior knowledge also means that they are engaged with the subject. So it's not simply you talking, you're asking them to get involved. So it focuses attention. You could also talk about the text with the group. So if it's a textbook you're working from, hold it up, talk about the pictures, the images, talk about the title, talk about the chapter heading. All this leads into making a prediction. So the front cover, the headlines, talking generally about the topic, all help students activate their prior knowledge and become ready for a reading session. And also, you may wish to introduce orally through talk some of the vocabulary they're going to find in the next session. There might be some key words that you want to have on the blackboard just to highlight them before you start, so they're ready to see them when they read them in the text. So why do we activate prior knowledge? Well, we do this so that students become active learners. We need them before we start to be alert, focused, and attentive. They need to be thinking about the subject matter, not passively waiting for it to happen. They need to be actively involved. So they're thinking, they're listening, they're maybe speculating when they get to prediction. I'll explain that in a minute. They also need to be remembering what they really know, but they may have forgotten. And this gives them confidence for the next step. And if they're talking in pairs, it helps students to remember what they know and to explore new ideas in a safe way. If I'm saying, what did we do last time? Oh, of course, I remember now. Yes, we were talking about what happened in the novel. And then the character did this. Yes, I remember that now. And then they can make a response to you. Sir, madam, this is what I remember. This is what we remember. So it helps them to practice their answers informally before they respond to you. So they try out ideas in a safe context. And then if you can get students to explain what they know to the whole class before you start reading, this raises their level of challenge and also gives them great confidence. Using a discussion and speaking and listening, oracy, to build understanding across the group. Right, so we've got everybody engaged. Then we ask the students to predict what's going to happen. What are we going to find out in this next section of the book, these next couple of paragraphs? So you need to do, usually in a active reciprocal reading session, it'll be two paragraphs. It's a short section because we're going to read it in depth. So it may be a page, you may want a chapter, but you have more impact focusing on a small section of text. And this depends on how much prior knowledge the children have, how difficult the text is, and how much content, how much volume of information you've got to get through. So as professionals, you need to work that out for yourselves, but usually it's about 2 paragraphs. Now, with a new group, it may be that you, as the teacher, the adult, need to show them how to do a prediction. So you model it for them. So you could say, right, we've been reading this story about a young girl who's beginning school. And what we found out from her was that she was a new starter and that she was nervous on her first day because she'd come from another school far away and she didn't have any friends. So my prediction is She is going to feel nervous as she comes into the classroom, and she will want to sit at the back so nobody notices her. That's me modeling a prediction. Now, you may have to do this for students a few times so they get the hang of it. If you are modeling it, always ask them at the end, do you agree with that? Someone might say, well, no, sir. No, madam. She's quite a confident girl, so I think she'd want to sit at the front. That's fine. It's a prediction. It doesn't have to be correct. It does have to be valid. We want students to speculate because that gets them actively involved in the text. They invest in the text. They want to find out what happens. Once you have modeled it and they've got the idea, you might encourage students to try a prediction in pairs. Well, what do you think might happen? That's my prediction. What do you think will happen? And then they talk together. And the braver ones, the more confident ones, can then respond to you and the whole class. Very important to reward predictions, even if they're not correct at first. It's not whether they're correct, it's whether they are valid. Was that a worthwhile prediction to make based on what we already know? The important thing is to encourage students to respond, to speculate, because this leads to active, i.e. critical reading. They become intellectually involved. So why do we predict? Well, the reader anticipates what is going to come next. So they're setting themselves up academically, thinking ahead. A prediction gives a purpose for the reading. Right, I've said this is going to happen. So let's see if it does. I'll read it and see if I'm right. Or maybe I'm not right, but I'm reading on for a purpose. Predictions encourage a more active engagement with the text. So pupils are in the moment with you and they're reading collaboratively with the rest of the class. They're actively involved. To make a prediction, the reader has to use what they already know, their prior knowledge of a topic, the text type, and they pick up clues from the text itself. So they're gradually building their understanding, layer on layer. So they're making meaning, they're creating meaning in the text. And the quality of the prediction and the way students use the text will tell you a lot about how that student is developing as a reader. You'll become, as a teacher, much more aware of students who are using the clues in the text to build up their understanding and those that are still a bit confused. You can judge that by their responses to you. So there's a lot going on there when students are reading. They're becoming actively involved. You might be modeling, you're asking them feedback, and at the same time, you're making an assessment of the quality of their feedback, because that will tell you whether students are understanding, comprehending or not. And therefore, do you have to step in and help them at all? Right, let's just sit back for a minute and think what we've done so far. Now, you might remember, I certainly do, because it's one of the highlights of my year. When we came to Morogoro, it was a wonderful, wonderful educational trip, and many thanks to Mr. Fundy for organising it. With Mr. Fundy's support, so far we have run ARR workshops in Morogoro schools, and we've got some great film footage of that. We've recruited yourselves for the Active Reciprocal Reading coaching program. And now we have completed sessions 1 and 2. What's going to happen next? Well, we're going to record sessions 3, 4, and 5. Reading, clarifying and questioning, and then summarizing. Now, each of these sessions, that's all 5 sessions, will you will have the PowerPoints, the slides on the Pixel app during the course of next month. And Mr. Martin has been talking to the people who build the apps. I'm not technical. I don't know how this happens, but he's assured us that we can get the PowerPoint slides up there. And then when we do, we hope to be able to put a YouTube link so you can see these recordings as well. So we'll be putting the YouTube links onto the app for all of the recorded sessions, all 5 sessions, as soon as possible. So there's a lot going to be happening. Oh, we also hope that you'll give us some feedback on WhatsApp. So, some reminders. The Pixel app will contain very shortly the PowerPoints and eventually the YouTube links. We are looking for your feedback, and we're going to be doing session 3. In fact, we're going to be doing sessions 3, 4, and 5 over the next 2 weeks. So by the end of August, this will all be completed. I hope that's working for you. Good luck with the program. And we look forward to hearing from you. I keep saying it on the app. Please get back to us, and all the very best. And maybe we will see you sometime next year in Morogoro.